in a such a way that data can be easily accessed and it can be managed and it can be updated. When I'm using a database, or when I'm doing this defining of a database, at the time I have to specify the data type. Application program, in the sense program is a set of instruction. If it is an application program, we are writing that set of instruction for a particular purpose. Hello everybody, welcome to the very first session on B.C.A's 4th semester, and we are dealing with a subject called Database Management System. So in short, it will be considered as DBMS, and we are in the Unit 1 of a Session 1, that is Introduction to the Unit 1. I am Rohini TS, Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram, 1st Grade College, Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. So in the first session of this Unit 1, in our today's session, we are going to see what do you mean by database. That is, what is the definition of database, for what purpose we are going to use this database. And as I told in the previous session, we got a brief knowledge regarding this database management system. So I have discussed regarding the number of units and what is the marks weightage, what is the exam pattern, what is the textbook that you wanted to refer, everything that I have discussed in my last session. So in our today's session, we will get into the first unit. In that, we will get to know what you mean by database. So as I told, database is different than the database management system, that is DBMS. So regarding that also I will be discussing in my today's session. Along with that, we will see some of the important definitions that you must know before getting into the deep discussion regarding this DBMS. And also I will be discussing regarding example with respect to this database management system. We'll see the first slide of the session 1, that is regarding database. So as we all know that data will going to plays a very important role, isn't it? So if I take any of the organization, enterprise or any of the school, colleges, data will going to play a very important role. Then what do you mean by data here? Data is nothing but it is a raw fact that needs to be processed. For example, if I consider so what you will get to know out of it? So what do you mean by Sneha 129783? What it mean? So instead of, if I am writing name is equal to Sneha and then age is equal to 12 and door number is equal to 9783, which is more convenient here. This one will going to be more convenient than this one. That is what here it is considered as data. That is what? Raw fact that needs to be processed. Then what I can be considered as a data? You can take anything as a data. The data comprises of what? It can be numbers, digits, alphabets, even special character. Everything will be considered as data that needs to be processed. So here what is the processing? I am assigning what do you mean by name, what is the age and what is their door number. Everything that I am mentioning, that is what? Information. So that data is a raw fact that needs to be processed. And information is what? Processed data. Then how I am going to store large amount of data? For that purpose, we are going to have this database. Then what is the definition of this database here? Database is a collection of logically related data organized in a way that our data can be easily accessed, managed and updated. Then what do you mean by database here? It is a collection of logically related data. For example, if I am taking a student data, at that time, I should include the data only which is related to student. I should not take the data which is a neighbor of that student. I have to take a data which is related only to the student. That is what we have to take a data that is a collection of logically related data. So then how it will be organized? So that is when such a very good manner that will going to help us in order to easily access. That means I can fetch the data, I can manage the data, and if I wanted to modify that content, I can do that with the help of this updation. So that database is nothing but it is a logically related organized data. So in a such a way that data can be easily accessed and it can be managed and it can be updated. So that we are going to use this database in order to store the logically related data. For example, as I told, if you take an example of employee, if you want to store the details of employee, then that database must contain the details regarding employee. It should not contain the details of student. So that is what we are going to store this database, that is logically related data will going to be stored. And mini word or universe of discourse. That means whatever I can consider as a data which is exist in a real world, everything can be related to each other. So that kind of data will going to be stored with the help of this database, and it represents some aspects of the real world. As I told, student is a real world entity and employee is a real world entity, and if I take an example of colleges, university, everything is of what a real world entity. With the help of that real world entity, we can represent it with the help of this database. And here, logically coherent collection of data with inherent meaning. So that means one data is related to another data, whatever I am grouping. So that is what this point mean. And also we are going to use this database in order to serve a particular purpose, or which is going to be built on a specific purpose. So as I told, if you take an example of student, so if I take an example of student comprises of what? Student will going to have a student ID and student name will be there, age or date of birth will be there, and what is the course they have opted, that is also there. So if you consider all those details, that details are what I required, those are the mandatory fields, so that we are taking for a specific purpose. So if I am taking a age, if I am taking a date of birth, in order to get to know the age, we are taking the date of birth. That means every data and information whatever we have in a database will going to be used for a specific purpose. Then what I can consider as an example for this database, you can take any of the shopping cart, Amazon, Flipkart or MYSURU. You can take any of the websites which is of or else you can also take the social media as an example for the database. Then if you consider this Amazon, so there they are going to categorize it, right? Whether you are looking for the groceries, whether you are looking for the water dresses or accessories, that is what how they are grouping all those things. So they are combining or they are grouping logically related data. They are not mixing up everything. So they didn't dump everything in a single website. Instead of that, they are categorized it. So that will be more convenient in order to access. For example, if I am looking for a dress, whether it's for a kids or a woman or a man, then I can click on that option. So if I click on that, then it will going to give me another browser, like another window will going to be open. So after that, whatever I want based on my requirement, based on my choice, I can access that. That is what it can be easily accessed, managed and updated. That is what we are going to call this as a database. Then what do you mean by database management system? So you just imagine, as I told the example of Amazon. So it not only comprises of a material which is related to men, and also it comprises of material or any of the accessories that is also related to women or a kids for a older one. So that is what, if you consider a men as one database or women as another database, and in the same way I have n number of databases, then who is going to manage all those databases? For that purpose we require this database management system. In short, it will be considered as what? DBMS. So DBMS is nothing but it is a collection of program. Can I consider a program as a set of software? Yes. So why I require a software? In order to perform a particular task, isn't it? We are going to use a software in order to perform a particular task. Then if I am using that a set of program or a set of instruction in order to perform a particular task, then that is also considered as what? DBM is here. So DBMS is also considered as software. That is a collection of program. DBMS is a software that allows creation, definition and manipulation of database. With the help of this database management system, I can create, I can manage and I can manipulate this database, and each database comprises of n number of table. Okay, I will discuss later in my coming slides here. Database is what? Collection of logically related data, and how we are going to save or how we are going to store that logically related data, that too with the help of table, and each table comprises of rows and columns. So just imagine, okay. So what we require first, so database is collection of what? tables, and each table comprises of rows and columns. So if you consider this as one table, if you consider this as another table, what it comprises of? It has what? Rows and columns, isn't it? So after this, if it is a collection, then it will be considered as what? Database. In the same way, if I have n number of databases and I am using one software in order to manage all those databases, then we are going to call that as a database management system. Understood? This is how this will going to be hierarchy. So that database management system or a DBMS is a software that will going to allows us in order to create, in order to manipulate and to define the database. Then DBMS is a tool used to perform any kind of operation on a data in a database. For example, if I want to fetch the age of a student, or if I want to fetch the marks of a student, or if I wanted to get to know the course what they have opted, so that is what we are fetching the content. So if this DBMS is a software, it has to allow us in order to fetch all those details. Then that is what we are considering this DBMS as a tool that will help us in order to perform any kind of operation. It can be what? Read operation, write operation, execute operation over the data which is present in the database. That is, you have to understand. So DBMS is also provides protection and security to the database. As I told, so this database comprises of n number of table, and each table comprises of number of data. That is what information or a data which will going to be stored in the table, and if it is a collection of table, that is a database. If it is a collection of database, then we are using a software in order to manage all those database. Then we have to provide some security, we have to provide some protection to all those data which is present in the database, because when we are doing any online transaction or when we are purchasing over the online, at the time we are going to give all the KYC, that means we are going to give our credential. Then what basis we are giving all those things? So we thought that, or we know that this database management system will going to provide security and what protection to our database, whatever we have in a database management system. That is what the reason we are all purchasing, or we are all doing the e-commerce without any doubt. That is what the reason of having this DBMS. So these are the things you have to remember when it comes to the DBMS. So next, we'll see some of the important definition that you have to understand. What is the first one? Defining a database. So now we got to know what is database, isn't it? That is a collection of related data. Then what do you mean by defining a database here? It specifies the data types, structures and constraints of the data to be stored. What is the definition or defining of a database here? When I'm using the database, when I'm doing this defining of a database, at the time I have to specify the data type. For example, if I consider a student comprises of a student ID and student name and age. Okay, so if I consider a student ID, what kind of data it will going to hold? Whether it is only numbers or if it is a collection of numbers and alphabets. If I consider a name, can I take a name in the numerics? Can I take a name as 12, 18 like that? No, right? It has to be character. That means I am specifying a type of data. If I consider an age, whether it needs to be what numbers or alphabets, that I have to represent. Then I have to specify the data type, the type of a data that I wanted to take for a database, that I have to mention when I am defining a database. Along with that, I have to specify structure. So structure in the sense what? How my database should look like what is the number of table it comprises of, and each table should have this number of columns or number of rows. That is what records. Okay, so I have to configure or I have to conceptualize how must be my database should look like. That is regarding what? Structure. So you need to specify type of a data as well as how it must look like. Along with that, we have to specify constraint. So that constraints are nothing but rules and regulations. So if you take the example of, so if you wanted to join first PUC, at the time your age should not be lesser than 14 or 15. That is what you have to mentioning some of the rules and regulation. In the same way, when I am specifying or when I am defining a database, there I am going to specify a data type as well as structure and then constraint, that is rules and regulation needs to be satisfied in order to insert the data in the database. That is regarding what? Defining a database. Next, what we have here? Metadata. So metadata in the sense data about data. So you would have seen what textbook. So in that we have a index page. So if I consider a textbook, complete textbook is what? Or each page of a textbook is considered as a data. And if I consider the index page, that index page comprises of what? Serial number will be there, chapter number or a unit number along with a page number. So if I see that page number, exactly that chapter will going to be present. That means that index page itself a data and another page is also a data. If it is a data of another data, then we are going to call that as a metadata. Data about data is called metadata. So that database definition or a descriptive information. So this metadata is like a catalog. For example, you have purchased some of the gadgets or you have purchased some of the electronic devices. So at that time, anyway you are going to get the product, right? Along with that you are going to get catalog. That means what? That will specifies you how to use that. That is metadata. A data about a data. So it comprises of what? Data definition and descriptive information. How to use a database. What database comprises of. Everything will be stored in the metadata and stored by the DBMS in the form of a database, catalog or a dictionary. So when it is including all the data which is related to database, then we are going to call that as a database catalog or database dictionary. Okay, so this is regarding metadata. We'll see the next definition, that is regarding what? Manipulating a database. So if I wanted to manipulate it, I must have a data first. So for example, consider I have a database and that comprises of number of tables and each table has some of the data. Manipulation in the sense what? I can create a table, I can fetch a data out of that, I can delete, I can update, I can alter it. So those are the operation that I can perform on the data. That is considered as what? Manipulating a data. And also already I have discussed regarding when I am doing a number of units which is there in the subject, I have discussed regarding SQL. That is what? Structured query language. If I wanted to communicate with a DBMS, then I have to use a SQL language. Here also, when I wanted to manipulate it, when I wanted to talking to that DBMS or a database management system, I have to write a query. So that query is nothing but what's your name? So what's your age? That is what I'm asking. I'm asking the questions. So in the same way, I'm going to ask the question to the DBMS. Then it will going to fetch all the contents. Then it will give the resultant back to the user. So that query and update the database mini world. So we can give some query and that will going to fetch and updates the resultant, and also it generates the reports. Reports are nothing but resultant that what we are going to get after taking this query. That is considered as what? Manipulating a database. So now we got to know regarding what do you mean by defining a database, what is metadata and what is manipulating a database. We'll see the next one, sharing a database. As we all know that we are using or we are storing related data in a database. So if it is not available for sharing, that is of no use of doing all these operations or doing all these stuffs. So here sharing a database in the sense it is allowing us to use the database by multiple number of user. That is considered as what? Sharing a database. So that allow multiple user and programs to access the database simultaneously. So if you are accessing, even if I wanted to access, it should allow me to access. That is what? We are using it or we are accessing the content of a database simultaneously. Or else if you are searching or if you are manipulating a database and if I wanted to check it or if I wanted to retrieve anything, I should not wait. So that is what? Not simultaneous. So sharing in the sense what? It will allowing the users or it is giving some privileges to the user, have a multiple user access and we can access a database content simultaneously. We'll see the next one, that is application program. So as I told, database management system is a software and I am writing a query. That is what SQL, structured query language. Application program, in the sense program is a set of instruction. If it is an application program, we are writing that set of instruction for a particular purpose. For what purpose we are creating this application program or a software here? In order to fetch the content of a database. That is what accesses the database by sending queries to DBMS. I am accessing the content of DBMS by writing a queries. In order to write that queries, I am using some programming language. That programming is called as what? Application program. So that application program allows us to access the database by sending a queries. By writing a queries, I am asking some question. I am giving some comments. So with the help of that, I can access the content of DBMS. So next, already I have discussed regarding query. So that is what it will going to cause some data to be retrieved. I'm asking, I'm fetching, I'm manipulating with the help of this questionnaires, that is query. Next we have a transaction. What do you mean by transaction here? For example, consider I have a student database, and student database comprises of student ID, student name, as well as their date of birth or a age. Okay. So transaction in the sense what? If I am updating or if I am checking or if I am deleting, if I am creating, for example, whatever the operation that I am doing, that will be considered as what? Transaction. So that it will may cause some data to be read and some data to be written into the database. If I am creating or if I am updating or if I am deleting or if I am erasing the content, that is what? We are doing some of the operation which may be either read or write operation to the database. And this transaction can be what? For example, you are sending some amount to someone by making use of some of the digital payments. So you can take the example of what? Phone Pay, Google Pay, GPay, like that. So at that time, what will be the resultant? Either transaction is over or a transaction is complete or none. So it can be done or none. That is what? It should not be stuck in between. So either it needs to be read or it needs to be write. So that kind of operation will be considered as what? Transaction. So next we have protection methods. That means when I am giving all these kinds of opportunities or when we are getting all these kinds of benefits with the help of this database management system, then providing a security or a protection to that database will going to be a very mandatory thing. So in that, protection may be either of two types. One is system protection and another one is security protection. When it comes to the system protection, it may be related to hardware and software protection. For example, crashing of a data or a short circuit which has happened with any of the hardware. So system protection is always related to giving some protection, physical protection to the hardware as well as the software. When it comes to the security protection, at that time it related to authentication and authorization of a genuine user. That is related to security protection. So when we are dealing with this database, it is necessary or mandatory in order to provide a protection to the data which is present in the database, and it can be of two types: system protection, security. If it is a system that is related to hardware and software maintenance, so due to some crashing of a software or some malpracticing of this software, everything will be comes under this system protection. Then security protection, that includes should not allow the unauthorized users or should not allow the unauthorized or unauthenticated user. That is related to what? Security protection. So next, what is this? Maintain the database system. If I wanted to get a benefits of a database management system, then the maintenance of that database is also important, isn't it? So I have to protect the data, I have to provide a security to the data, and the database needs to be changed according to the changing the requirements of a user. That is what? We are maintaining the database as per the requirement of a market or as per the requirement of a user, so that allow the system to evolve as requirements change over the time. All the time you are not going to like a kesari bath, right? So you are going to prefer another sweets also. So in that same way, if I wanted to get the benefit of this DBMS, that database management system should also be able to evolve with the changing requirements of a time. So that is related to what? Maintain the database system. So these are the important definition that you have to understand. So next, here you can see the architecture of this database management system. So what we have here, it comprises of, where we have a store database. So if you see this symbol, you have to understand that it is holding some data, it is storing some data. So it comprises of store database, that comprises of any kinds of data here, and also we have a store database definition. That means we can consider that as a metadata. So this is holding a data about another data, that is metadata. We have two kinds here, one is store database and another one is metadata. And also you have to understand one thing, why we require user or a programmer. For example, if I wanted to get the benefit out of a DBMS, then I have to write a query, or I have to use particular software in order to access the content which is present here, right? So here, users or a programmer, the person, one who is checking or one who is want to access the content of a database management system. So that with the help of this user or a programmer, they are going to send some of the queries to the application programs. So now we got to know application program is what. So I am writing some queries in order to interact with the database management system, right? So by writing these queries, I am asking whatever I want. Then this user or a programmer is sending their request to database management system with the help of writing query with the help of this application program. So when this application program got to know that what is the requirement of a user, then it will reach to this software to process the queries or a program. That means we are appealing, I want this kind of data, I want this kind of information. So you give me, I am sending some queries, I am giving some requests to this database management system with the help of this application program. Then this application program will going to analyze what is the requirement of a user. Then that will be sent to this software in order to process. So again this application program will send the data to the software, that is another software. Then that software will going to get to know that how to process that queries or a request. Then that leads to this software in order to access the stored data. Then it will going to process that queries or programs. Then it will reach to this stage. Then it will fetch the content from metadata as well as from the stored database. Again this will going to be reached to the user back as a reports or a result. This is how database management system architecture will going to work. I hope you understood. Next, we'll see one of the example in order to understand how database management system is all about. Like what is database is all about and what database comprises of first of all. So here, let me consider the university database. So you're all familiar with a university here. I'm taking an example of university. So if I take an example of university as a database, and that database comprises of number of table, isn't it? And each table will going to have a rows and columns, and rows represents the record, column represent its attribute or characteristics. So here, information concerning students, courses and grades in a university environment. So if I consider a university, then that comprises of what? Student has to be there and it has to give some of the courses, it has to offer some of the courses. After that, it has to provide some grades. So you can see here, I have a tables called student, course, section, grade report and prerequisite. So we'll see here, you see the student table, right? I said table. Table in the sense what? That comprises of rows as well as column. That comprises of rows as well as it includes column. So then, how many columns we have in a student table? 1, 2, 3, 4. It comprises of 4 columns. Then how many rows? So rows are nothing but records. There we are giving the data, this name. So name is a column that represent the attribute. Student consists of what? That has name and student number is there and student class and student major course they are opting for major subject. That is what we are representing its attribute. Then record or a row in the sense we are giving a data to the table. If it is a collection of table, that will be considered as what? Database. In the same same way here student is a table, and also we have a course. So as of now you no need to worry about all these content. You just need to understand what is course table comprises of. Here we have a course name, student number, class, and we also have a major. So what column represent? That represents the attribute, and row represents the record or a tuple. So this is what section table, and also we have a grade report as well as prerequisite. So these are the table of a database called university. Do I have any other table which is not so relevant to the university? No, because database is a collection of related data which is logically related data. So I have to take a data and information which is only related for my database. So this is what you have to understand as an example. I hope you all understood. So it's all about today's session. In my coming session, I will be discussing about the characteristics of a database, and we'll see who are all the actors on the scene, and also we'll see about the workers behind the scene. So that will be the content of my next session. I hope today's session is clear for all of you. Let me meet you in the next session. Until that, keep learning, keep on growing. Thank you.